If you're thinking about picking up Aliens Dark Descent, and I recommend you do, this is a really fun and also very challenging tactical strategy game. I recommend that you pay attention to all the prompts they give you early on. Like when they tell you that you're going to walk into this room and that you're going to face a very difficult section that will more than likely result in the deaths of your Marines, you need to take that warning seriously. Otherwise, you're going to end up like me and just get someone snatched and grabbed and bodied. It's insane how brutal this game can be. In this video, I'm going to give you some things that I've learned while playing Aliens Dark Descent that should help you on your journey through this game. I've played roughly around 10 hours of this game. I've had a really good time with it. I've had some moments where I was pretty frustrated with just how quickly I was surrounded by some of the xenomorphs. But other than that, as soon as the system started to kind of make sense, as soon as it became acclimated, I had a really good time. So let's get into it. The first thing that I learned in Aliens Dark Descent is that preparation equals success. If you are going into any of these rooms and you notice that there's multiple entrance points, it's more than likely going to set up an ambush. What you're going to want to do is probably weld a few of these doors, find areas where you think that enemies are going to claw their way into, and set your Marines up in a way where they're not just going to sit in the center and get tackled. Because what's crazy is that while the xenomorphs aren't necessarily a threat, if your Marines can react to them, the moment they start crashing the front lines, because let's say you've gone off and overextended your Marines and they're very panicked, you're going to notice that their accuracy is just gone and they're missing a ton of shots. And the moment they kill one of these aliens in front of them, the alien explodes, they get acid damage, and they start to panic more. The more your Marines start to panic, once they start getting paranoid or highly anxious or whatever, it's pretty much a wrap. Especially if you walk into an area where it's a point of no return. You will get killed. So the best way to counter that is that once you walk into a room and you see multiple entrance points, find what you would consider a safe spot, put your Marines back to that, set up a turret, make sure that it has a nice large area cone for it to shoot at, and then activate the area. Make sure that you keep your Marines on the move. That's something they tell you early, but I feel like it's not emphasized enough when you play. But if you're prepared walking into any of these areas, you will be successful. And you're going to have to accept the fact that your Marines are going to take a lot of hits. I really feel like if you played this on medium, it's not as bad because you go up against a charger. They have a nice little swipe attack. They'll knock down some of your Marines. But you should be okay as long as you're prepared. Make sure you have your turret up. Make sure you're using like certain command point abilities like the shotgun blast. Anything that will assist you in doing maximum amount of damage. Don't worry about the ammo when you get into these areas. It is all about damage output. Make sure your positioning is good. You really need to be prepared when you walk into Aliens Dark Descent or you will die like I did. The next thing you're going to have to learn, and I think this is going to be pretty obvious, is that this is a game of trial and error and that restarting is okay. It is completely fine to go ahead and restart certain sections, especially when you get to like those big set piece fights, because sometimes the situation is unwinnable, especially if you're not considering all the factors moving forward. The first time I fought the Alien Queen, I was kind of stunned about how quickly we got wiped, but it wasn't because of the damage that the Alien Queen was doing. It was the fact that the facehuggers were scurrying on the ground, and my Marines were pretty much panicked at that point because of all the damage that the Alien Queen was doing. I didn't notice that the facehuggers just grabbed them, and that was it. It's really frustrating because at that point, you really don't have a way to pull the facehuggers off you. And it's one of those things you really have to pay attention to and just come to accept that, look, sometimes the game is going to screw you over. But that's okay because you can load back in. And if you have a turret or if you have certain resources that will assist you, just replan. Think out your strategy. I put a turret in front of the door. I then backed my Marines up. I had them use suppressive fire, shotguns, whatever it was, to ensure that I killed all the facehuggers, and then I was doing max damage to the queen. And then I ended up killing her. I mean, the most frustrating thing about that, even after I'd killed her, was that there were still enemies in the room that were coming in, and I was like, okay, the game wants to be kind of unfair and put you at a disadvantage, even though you practically used all of your resources to heal, break down doors, repair your turret, all that type of stuff. But just understand that restarting is okay because more than likely you're going to have a better strategy the next time you go through it. So it shouldn't be too bad the next time around, unless you're completely screwed and you forgot to actually prepare. This section is probably going to be the most important thing you need to learn, and that is mental health is paramount to success. You cannot overextend your Marines. I mean, you can. You can throw them into any situation you want. That's completely up to you. But if you overstress them out, you're going to notice that all these negative traits are going to pop up over their heads. You're going to notice that some of the dialogue they're saying is going to go a little bit off the rails. They're panicking. They're saying crazy shit. You're going to have to like literally manage that and go into some of these areas, weld a couple doors shut, and then create a safe space to rest. Because if you don't do that, it is going to negatively affect your squad. And if you aren't paying attention to their mental health, you're going to notice that when you get into some of these areas, when you go back to the ship, that their stay in the medical wards are going to be longer and longer. And eventually you're going to get to a point in the game where you're going to acquire these mental health specialists who will help you remove these negative traits, but you're going to notice how long it takes for them to remove it. Sometimes it can be up to like 5 to 9 days, which is insane because some of the Marines that you have early on are the ones you get really attached to because they have certain specialized abilities and you're really comfortable because you trust them in combat. What sucks is that when you start to get new recruits, some of them, they just are terrible, especially in regard to some of their normal traits that they come with. Some of them can be like a bruiser or a coward. There's one of them where pretty much like if this individual goes into a rest area, he's guaranteed to knock down a health point from a random Marine, which is stupid because you might be walking into an ambush and that health point really matters because it might end up saving someone's life. And it's really important for people to understand. You just can't overextend them. They will literally give you indicators about, hey, I'm a little burnt out. Hey, we should go back. So while the developers have stated that objectives can take anywhere up to 20 minutes to an hour to complete, you don't have to complete everything all in one go. You may want to, and believe me, I tried. I really wanted to do that, but I noticed that the more my Marines got tired, the harder it was for them to be effective in combat. And when you start fighting some of these different xenomorphs and some of these different human enemies, you're going to want to be as prepared and as rested as possible. This next part is going to sound a lot like common sense, but I really recommend it. Do not get fixated on your favorite Marines. When you are able to unlock the training room, make sure that you put some of the new Marines through that, but also make sure that you put some of your more experienced Marines through it so they can get some really well-deserved experience so that you can get that nice little balance. I recommend that you send out your best Marines when you're first starting a level, primarily because you know that they're going to be the most efficient. They're probably higher class levels. They probably have some of the best traits. That's fine. But once you're able to go back to home base, take some of your Marines out on a small expedition and have them go through some of the smaller objectives, grabbing certain material, things like that. I really think it's helpful to have that cycle because if you fixate too much on your best Marines, you're going to notice that if you happen to run into trouble, and in this game you definitely are because it's just unfair at times, you're going to see them in the med bay for an extended stay. And you're also going to notice that you don't have enough physicians per day to ensure that they get back up on their feet quickly. So it's really best that as you're cycling through, you create a nice balance. You can put some of these Marines through intense training, but if you don't want to lose anybody, especially because just the threat of it, that a Marine that you've been working with this entire time, that you have an attachment to because of that reliability, could permanently die, it's recommended that you create that nice little balance so that you ensure that maybe, you can let one of the expendable reserves go and you won't feel so bad because that's what I did. And I don't feel bad about it at all. Like I went in and I was like, you know what? I don't really use this person. So if they happen to get killed, that's completely fine. But my Marines get experience and they're going to get replaced anyway. So honestly, it's not that bad of a trade-off. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about, and it's really goes hand in hand with your cycling through your Marines, is having balance within your squads. When you reach level 3 with a Marine, you're going to be able to choose a class for him. And it's really recommended that you just don't have the same class for each type. Like you're gonna want to be able to have that type of balance because you're gonna want to have a techie with you. You're gonna want to have a gunner. You're gonna want to have, a sniper or a marksman. You're going to have a sergeant. You're going to want to have that balance in your squad because you're going to notice that in a lot of these areas that there's going to be a lot of shortcuts, and that having that balance and having these new weapons available to you and new abilities will make a lot of these sections easier. Because sometimes the damage that you can do with a marksman or having that gunner is huge, especially in sections where you're going to get surrounded quickly. And the reason why you're going to want to have a sergeant, you're going to have multiple of them, is because they immediately get abilities that can help you add more command points. They can help boost morale. They can help reduce stress. So it's really important that you have that nice balance. And you're going to want to be able to unlock a lot of shortcuts, and that's really helpful in some of the more stressful sections because you want to be able to navigate through areas quickly instead of getting screwed over and not being able to open up a door because you decide to carry a very heavy firepower type of squad. I really recommend you balance out your squads. I really recommend that you do unlock the marksman because besides being great in terms of accuracy, they have an ability that can knock down some pretty heavy enemies and they do a lot of damage. So it's recommended that you bring one of those along, especially in certain levels where you know there's going to be Praetorians roaming. And those Praetorians do so much damage. Their AoE attack is guaranteed to get a knockdown, and it is super frustrating seeing one of your Marines get concussed. Because once they're down, you're pretty much hoping that you can do damage, So it's recommended that you have that nice balance in your squad and not just emphasize one class. Outside of those 5 things, the one thing I cannot stress enough is patience. Do not try to rush through areas. You're more than likely going to get killed. This game obviously has like a fog of war that is going to block your sight when moving around, and that's completely fine. But if you try to rush into areas, you're more than likely going to rush to your death. And the thing that's crazy is that even though you can have a fully capable squad of Marines, they just aren't accurate enough at times to do damage to large scores of them. So it's really recommended that you move slowly. I would recommend after you clear out an area, move as fast as you want. But when you're first navigating through these sections, move slowly, exercise caution because your Marines are very, very weak and they will get torn through pretty fast, even though you'll believe in your head that you're pretty capable. But as you're only allotted a certain number of command points when you start out, you're going to see those go away really quickly when things get hectic. So you need to utilize certain abilities when you're getting into a tight pinch. For example, using the shotgun, using the grenades when you're at a distance. Maximize the damage that you can do, and always remember to walk and not run. Because running, you cannot shoot. And I remember they told me that, and I was like, that's fine. But I'm getting swarmed by a bunch of them, and I do not want to die a horrific death, and I don't want to lose any of my Marines, so I just kept running. When you can walk and fire at the same time, it is important that you're just patient and that you prepare. Always remember to plan out your defenses. They're going to give you time. They're going to tell you, look, we're entering into a very difficult combat section, and if you do not prepare for this, you are going to die. So make it easy on yourself by having a balanced squad, having someone who can hack doors and create these shortcuts, because if you don't have those shortcuts open, it then makes it that much harder for you to go all the way back around. And because enemies do respawn, you might find yourself wasting precious resources when trying to go to that final section of that level. It's just something you have to keep in mind. Be patient, but also be prepared. What I've talked about in this video is going to be things that you're going to see a lot of during your time with Aliens Dark Descent. And here's the crazy part. If you absolutely go into this game being prepared, being patient, having balance, not overextending, all of these things that I've talked about, it actually makes the experience a lot more streamlined and a lot easier. because one of the things that I noticed while playing this game is that the moment I was more prepared, the moment I was just rushing headfirst into my death, the moment I was actually utilizing strategy, I found myself going through these big set pieces and getting through them really quickly on my first try. Now, was I leaving resources behind? Yeah, but that's because the game wouldn't allow me to pick up some of the turrets that were dead, which kind of sucked. But beyond that, this is one of those games that I feel like if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to play the game the way it's intended, you're going to feel great. There's a lot of systems in place, a lot of reading, a lot of things you have to learn, a lot of mental notes, but I feel like the things I've talked about here in this video are going to help you find success early, and the game actually gets more forgiving as you move along, and as long as you're comfortable with that trial and error aspect of it. I feel like that's probably its biggest flaw right now, is that there's far too much trial and error at times. There's a little bit of jank here and there with some of the controls and some of the systems, but I feel like this is a really good game, one that's probably going to be overlooked in the grand scheme of 2023, but I really recommend, especially if you're a strategy fan or an XCOM fan, to give Aliens Dark Descent a try. And that's going to do it for this video. If you've played Aliens Dark Descent, if you feel like there's some things that I've missed, things that you feel that are important, that should be emphasized to new players or newcomers to this genre, to this game, let me know in the comment section below. I like to learn too. I'm not an expert when it comes to these types of games, and I'm having a really good time playing Dark Descent. It makes me want to play more of these games again. So, if you like this content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.